I didn't even know at the time that what I was doing was a startup. I remember going to my father and asking him, what can I, as an ordinary girl, do about a big problem? My mother kept saying at the time that I think only you and your father are going to be using this app. Because who is going to like change their behavior for climate change? That seemed like an impossibility. Just kept getting this gut feeling that I'm meant to do something else. I was very surprised to know that an average person spends about 80,000 to 90,000 hours at work in their lifetime. If we spend even a fraction of the time we are spending at work into solving some real world challenges around us, then we'll all become experts at making the world a better place. About 13 million people every year and counting get displaced because of extreme weather events. I had this idea brewing in my mind. So I asked our director and said, it's a great idea, but no. But at the back of our mind, we knew that someday a need for something like this will come.
Hi, welcome to LPU Talks, a space that ignites and inspires. Today's guest is a trailblazer who is turning climate crisis into climate action with just an app. She is a social entrepreneur, a climate advocate, and the visionary mind behind Cool the Globe app, an app that is helping millions in not just reducing their carbon footprint, but also tracking it. She is none other than Prachi Shivgoenker, who is one of the most influential young people in India today and has also been listed in Forbes 30 Under 30. Welcome to LP Talks, Prachi.
Thank you.
So tell me something. Most people wait until they've made it in life to do something meaningful. But I think it was the opposite for you.
Right.
Tell us what sparked Cool the Globe in your early 20s.
I think you must have heard this story, but...
No, I want the audience to find out also.
Okay.
Yes.
So I feel like everybody has a decisive moment that comes in life, and we were just talking about this. I went to a different kind of a school. It was an experimental school. We learned by doing. You know, we didn't have uniforms. We would do things like cooking. We used to have something like Swavalamban. We would study on our own for a whole month.
Wow.
And it was a Marathi medium school. So when I was in 3rd or 4th standard, my school teacher had given us a very interesting homework. She had asked us to write a letter to our future selves.
Wow.
10 years from now, where would I want to be and who would I want to be? And I wrote that letter and then completely forgot about it. Now, many years passed. You know, I gave my 10th board exams, 12th board exams. And everybody in my family is an engineer, and I'd taken admission for computer engineering. Now people say that, you know, to make it in life, now a lot of people are engineering dropouts. So I can also proudly say that I'm a 2-month engineering dropout.
Oh my God, okay.
So I was 2 months into college, and but something within me didn't feel right. You know, I just kept getting this gut feeling that I'm meant to do something else. And it was at this decisive point that something interesting happened. My school teacher sent that very letter back to me, written 10 years ago by my younger self to the Prachi she aspired to be.
Wow.
And reading it was a huge wake-up call for me, because in it, my younger self had written about making an impact and changing the world.
Wow.
And I had not thought that way in a very long time. So I got inspired by the words and the dreams of my younger self. And I decided to go on a quest to figure out how I could make the biggest impact. If you've seen the movie Rockstar, you know, he goes out trying to look for heartbreak so that he'd be inspired to make a song. It was something similar, you know. I wanted to try and figure out how I could make some kind of a difference to my career. And my mom is here. I called my parents down and I gave the first pitch of my life I gave to them. I worked for a week to make a proposal. And the proposal was that instead of continuing engineering, I wanted to drop out and take a gap year. And within that gap year, I jotted down a whole plan of what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do this. And I presented it to them, and by the end of it, they were just as excited as I was.
Excited? Oh my God.
Yes, they started out worried, of course, but because I had a plan in place and it was something different, they were also excited to join me in it.
Wow. A typical Indian parent would have a lathi in hand. There you dream of doing anything. You are in engineering college, there you leave it.
Hopefully, I think it's starting to change now.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Because now universities like LPU also encourage students who are doing something different,
Yes.
or doing something unconventional.
Yes, absolutely.
So what I remember searching at that time was, if I would have, I want to figure out how much time I'm even going to be spending at work. So I looked at how many hours we spend at work in our lifetimes. Do you have any guess?
I don't know, but this is very intriguing. I would love to know.
So I was very surprised to know that an average person spends about 80,000 to 90,000 hours at work in their lifetime.
And that would encompass in percentage how much of our lives? 50? No, not even more. More than that.
More than 50%, I'm
Oh
sure.
my God.
And then also you must have heard that it takes 10,000 hours for a person to become an expert at something. So if we spend even a fraction of the time we are spending at work into solving some real world challenges around us, then we'll all become experts at making the world a better place in a way.
Wow.
And that's when I was even more encouraged to try and figure out how I could carve for myself a high impact career. And so what I decided to do in that year was, I made a list of all the people who were very inspiring to me, all of my role models. And I started reaching out to them, asking them if I could shadow them for a few months. And in the course of that, because I wanted to become a social entrepreneur, I ended up shadowing a lot of social entrepreneurs that I looked up to.
Right.
And I'd, of course, at that time, I was also looking at what are some pressing issues around us. So
Yes.
I remember doing a Google search on what is the biggest problem in the world right now. And that's when climate change popped up. Now, all global experts, organizations, news media houses were talking about how climate change is the most pressing issue in front of us.
Yes.
But nobody around me was really talking about
Yeah,
it.
I mean, the action is not visible around us. Like, we are still
Right.
using plastic bottles and just doing whatever we were doing in the past 1 decade or 2 decades. Nothing has like conspicuously changed around us.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started looking at, if so many people are talking about this, let me look at what is exactly happening.
Yeah.
So I looked at the catastrophic effects of climate change, extreme weather events happening more frequently, more intensely, floods, wildfires, droughts, sea levels rising, loss of biodiversity. It's like the list was endless.
Yeah.
So I looked at all of this, and then I remembered asking myself a question. Do I care enough about this? And to be honest, at that time, the answer was no, because I was 17, 18, I
Yeah.
had enough on my plate.
Yeah. And it just looks too far. Like, okay, the impact of it is not like immediate, right?
Right, exactly. Climate change seemed like it was happening somewhere else to somebody
exactly.
else at some other time. And I was always more naturally attracted to wanting to do something with people.
Right.
A lot of my colleagues who are working on climate change grow up caring about the nature, or grow up gravitated towards the nature. I was more gravitated towards people.
Right.
And I thought this is only about the environment. So I left climate change aside, and I looked at, I decided, let me work on issues that I do care about. So I spent about 4 months traveling with farmers across Maharashtra with a social entrepreneur who was one of a big role model for me, called Jnaneshwar Bodke, who started a Abhinav Farmers Club. So they had about 2.5 lakh farmers who were coming together to do group farming, which during the course of that period, I realized there was climate resilient farming, because
Wow.
to make farming profitable, this is what they had to do.
Right.
Then I spent 4 months traveling with waste pickers. They really welcomed me into their homes,
Wow.
communities. And I spent another 4 months, which I still find the defining months of my life, interacting with thousands of young kids, asking them what their dreams look like and who they want to become. So these are the issues I care about: education, agriculture.
And then how did you stumble into climate change?
So when I was working on these issues other than climate change, that for the first time, I kept seeing it everywhere. It's like in every community I visited, I saw the effects of climate change. And I remember an old farmer taught me more about climate change than any global expert ever could. He said, small farmers like me just can't afford to do it anymore. ऊन पावसाचं गणितच बिघडलंय, which means the weather has become so unreliable that we can't do it. And when I can't afford to buy food, grow food, there are 1,000 people behind me who can't afford to buy food. So climate change can also mean more and more people go hungry.
Yeah, like a famine happening,
Yeah.
an impending famine.
Yeah. I remember one of the most inspiring women I met at the time. She was a waste picker. It was around the time I was working with a community of displaced waste workers at the outskirts of Bangalore. And she was not from here. She was a refugee from Bangladesh. Her family had come there because of extreme weather events happening there.
Wow.
And she was 18, around the same age as me, but she was already married and she had a young daughter. Now, the day I met her, I walked with her 2-3 kilometers to the nearest school, where she went in and asked if her daughter could be enrolled into the class. But they said no, because they didn't have the necessary paperwork, neither did they speak the mother tongue there, Kannada. So she didn't get enrolled. But this woman, she didn't give up. For the next 2 months, every single day, she would walk to the school, she would sit at the doorstep and she would demand that her daughter gets a place in the
So her
class.
persistence paid eventually.
Yes. Finally, they saw a way around the technicalities, around the language barriers, and her daughter did get a place in the class. Not only her daughter, I still have a picture with all of them. There were about 10 young mothers in their community. All of their kids got a place in the school because of her persistence. And during that time, I really saw how ordinary people also became like vehicles of change in their own communities. But I also realized that when I read about displacements happening because of climate change, about 13 million people every year and counting get displaced because of extreme weather events. When I read about that in the newspaper, it also means that a young mother like her has to flee from her hometown, come to a completely alien place and start her life from scratch, often with children in hand. And this is something I did care about. So slowly, during the course of this time, I wasn't even working on climate change, but slowly I realized that as ordinary citizens, we care about very simple things. We care about our homes, our health, our food, our livelihoods, and our families.
Yeah.
And climate change is affecting all of this.
Absolutely.
And it was only when I realized that I thought, yes, I do care about this. And then I started thinking about what is it then that I can do about this, and that's how the journey began.
And so then you saw a gap also, that there is nothing like app-wise or technologically that is, attributed to climate change.
Right.
Nobody is doing, everybody is building tech, building apps in other directions, but not when it comes to climate change. So you tapped into that.
Right. So the first question is, how do you get people to care about climate change in the first place? But once they do start caring about it, even those who care still don't know what to do. When I started caring about this issue, it still felt very overwhelming to me. I remember going to my father and asking him, what can I, as an ordinary girl, do about a big problem?
Exactly.
Like
yeah, most of us think that way.
Yeah. And what we decided was, let's start from our own home. We took up a challenge to reduce our own carbon footprint by 10% that year. But how? Which actions of mine are leading to most emissions? How can I reduce them? So my college at the time was 10 kilometers away. So I started going on a cycle for a few days.
Right.
We started doing simple things at home, put up a solar panel, started segregating waste, recycling.
But how did you
plastic.
quantify? Like I noticed in your app that you have quantified carbon emissions. That
Right.
like if you buy, say, a pre-owned piece of clothing, this is how much you're going to save in terms of your carbon footprint. So how do you quantify that?
Yeah.
Is there a science behind it, or is it just something random?
So that's a good question, because as I started doing these things, I also realized that if I wanted to keep doing it, I needed a way to quantify this, because we can only change consistently what we're measuring.
Yeah.
So we really started doing research on how do we track the carbon, like if I'm sure you track the calories in your food.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So the same way, can we track the emissions behind our actions? So we put about, I think, hundreds of hours, about 1,500 hours of research into this, and you realize that there are, at country level, at organization levels, people do calculate these things.
Right.
In reports of World
It's the new
Bank,
thing. Yeah, they
IPCC.
hire lawyers to, like.
Yeah.
Kind of, I know a lot of, because I'm a lawyer, so a lot of my colleagues are working with big corporations.
Right.
They're working to get them these certificates.
Yeah.
These green certificates where,
Absolutely.
something like that.
Yeah, so people get their carbon audits done, carbon footprint audits done. But of course, as individuals, we cannot appoint consultants. So how do we do that?
Yes.
This measurement should also become accessible to us. And so that's why the idea for the app came, that we wanted a way to tell individuals, this is what you can do about climate change and this is the impact you're making. Because I had to put a lot of research into trying to quantify the impact of my actions. We put all of that together.
That's incredible.
And when I did start quantifying, something very interesting happened, which is that I began to enjoy it. It felt good.
I'm sure, fitness enthusiasts, I'm sure, people who track their calories vehemently, they would be able to constantly tell, like, isme itna hai. This is how. I'm sure you also will be like equipped with that kind of knowledge that you can just in a jiffy say that, oh, if I do this, this is how much carbon I'm going to emit, and if I do this, this is how much I'm going to save.
I can tell carbon and calories both.
That's incredible.
And in fact, even now, if I go for a run, if I'm not tracking the run, I feel like it's gone to waste. So it's the same thing with sustainable actions also, right? If I've taken an action, I want to know what I've saved with that. So I started to really enjoy keeping track of it. It felt like a fun game.
Right.
And maybe because I was enjoying it so much, my batchmates, people around me also found it interesting, and they would come to me and say, we also want to join in on this challenge. And that's when, for the first time, I started thinking, is there a way I can get global citizens to join me on this individual quest I've started? And first, we started looking at whether there's a platform like this. There's a lot of fitness platforms.
Yes.
But is there a platform which would bring people together for sustainability, to climate action? And I couldn't find any at the time. So that's when we thought, if there's nobody else is doing it, then, let me just build it myself.
Right.
And that's how Cool the Globe started.
So what was your biggest challenge in starting a tech for good application? And how have you scaled it so beautifully, so amazingly?
Yeah. I was also in a college, so coming back here is actually very nostalgic. This is where Cool the Globe began. So I'm sure students here have internship periods. So we also used to have internship periods at the time, and I had this idea brewing in my mind. So I asked our director at the time if instead of interning somewhere else, I could start something of my own. And he was the first one to say this. I still have his email. He said, it's a great idea, but no, because if you just do something of your own, if it doesn't end up into something, then you might feel like you're lagging behind. You won't have the experience.
You'll be disheartened and crushed.
And also, like, other people would be interning in other places. They will get certificates. They will have something to show on their CV, and you may not have that. But I really badgered him, for 2 weeks. Every day I'd stand in front of his cabin and I sent him so many emails telling him I don't even care if I don't get other internship certificates. And I think he just wanted to see that persistence. And then finally he said, okay, fine, you can go ahead and start this as your internship project. And then at the end of those 2 months, I realized that this is even bigger than, it's not like a 2-month project, it's bigger than that. So then throughout my college years,
So you did not drop out of college, like 2 months into engineering?
Then I joined media, which is where...
Okay, right.
Yes. So I took a gap for a year and then I joined a media institute.
And it's incredible. I'm sure it will be motivating and inspiring to students all over, whoever listens to this podcast, that you can change fields and still do good. Like, you are a great example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, most people, I'm sure even here, most people who were doing media were dropouts from engineering.
Okay. I'd research that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
The biggest advantage of starting something as as a student is that you have a lower risk factor.
Yeah,
It's
nothing
not
to
like-
lose, right?
Yeah, you don't have anything to lose, and at that time feels abundant. You
Yeah.
just have so much time in your hands. But another flip side, the challenge that comes from starting young is that you don't have the vision of what is possible.
Right.
By the time I graduated college, we had launched the app, it was ready, and we put so many hours of work into this. I didn't even know at the time that what I was doing was a startup. I didn't know that there was an ecosystem was ready to support me. I could get funding if I wanted. So none of these things, they were available. I just was not aware of them.
Yeah.
So anything that was needed to build an app, we just learned it ourselves,
On
from
the go.
coding to
Yeah.
storyboarding, testing, I got students to come together and do that. So it was really like bootstrapped at its very core.
organic. Yeah.
Yeah. And then even when we launched it, there was a realization that even getting the first 100 users was so difficult. My mother kept saying at the time that I think only you and your father are going to be using this app because who is going to change their behavior for climate change? That seemed like an impossibility. But at the back of our mind, we knew that someday a need for something like this will come, maybe 5 years from now, maybe 10
Yeah,
years
that
from now.
awareness would set in, and then
Yeah.
eventually people would be turning to something like this.
Right. And at that time, this app will be there. But, thankfully it came much earlier than I thought it would.
Yeah.
And,
So how long did it take for you to scale it and monetize it?
Yeah.
I'm asking for students who are trying to work on ideas, similar ideas, or build apps and
Right.
scale them.
Absolutely. So one thing was very clear in my mind, that even if I'm deciding to start on my own, I should still earn at least as much as what my batchmates would, or what I would
Yeah.
earn working somewhere else.
Absolutely.
And so in a way, even before, at that time, I didn't know there was possible to get monetized through this. But I mean, now I know. So, but even then, there was always a way that we were, every year there were different ways, but we were always, earning something. So, 6 months before graduation, when I decided that I don't want to sit for placements, I want to work on this, we needed a media team, like the one you have here, to spread awareness about climate change, about our app. And what we did was we reached out to 10 social enterprises saying that we have our own media team for our own initiative, but we'd also love to create campaigns for you. And we pitched to 7 of them, and first 5 came on board, and those were...
So it was like a media agency at the onset. It was a media agency. Then gradually it metamorphosed into something.
Yes,
more.
I think the reason I'm telling that is because there was always a plan of action on how the earning is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
I get that. Okay. Yeah.
Because we had that, actually a lot of our videos started doing really well. Our message was very simple, that let each person reduce their own carbon footprint by 10%. And people liked that we were talking not just about the problem, but also about how every person can become a part of the solution.
Yes.
And people started coming on the app, recording their climate actions, and we really saw how one action inspired 10 others and created a ripple effect. So a lot of young people from different countries came to me and said, I want to be your ambassador in my country. And that's how, through youth-led movements, we reached over 25 million citizens around the world.
So you went global like that?
Yeah.
By sheer word of mouth?
Absolutely.
Wow.
By sheer word of mouth.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yes. And then when a lot of people got to know about it, then, organizations started coming to us.
So tell me, Prachi, you have met presidents, prime ministers, world leaders. What do you think, how are they towards climate change and climate crisis? Are they as active and proactive regarding climate crisis, or are they lackadaisical about it? What is their approach, and is it sufficient? Whatever they're doing, is it sufficient?
During the course of this journey, I got some very unique experiences. For the large part, I was working from the ground up, working with people, working with citizens, and trying to bring about this change from the ground up.
Right.
And then gradually, there were also some times when I realized that it happens two ways. Sometimes it also happens from top down.
Yeah.
And that's in spaces of policy making. When I was building the app, I would watch forums like COP, which were the United Nations Conference for Climate Change. And I would think only presidents and prime ministers and scientists go in places like this. And I never thought somebody like me can also reach there. So the first time, and that's why when you're a student, you don't have this vision of possibility. You don't think that's even possible. But when you start doing something different like this, your vision expands. And after we launched the app, I decided that year that I want to go there. And so I started reaching out to people I knew in this space, saying that I want to be at COP. Is there a way? It's a possibility. And I came to know that year, for the first time, the Indian government was sending 4 young people from the country as part of the delegation, as part of India's official delegation to COP27. And I applied for that, and I got through, and I became, I got to go there, and that's really where I got to meet with a lot of world leaders and see how this problem is being tackled at country levels. I think what I realized, especially when you go places like this, a lot of people think climate change is a scary thing to work on. But there's a lot of action, there's a sense of action, there's movement.
There is that sense of urgency that, we need to do something, because honestly, like, as a citizen, I don't see it. And especially with news like, Trump banning paper straws and all that, you feel that, okay, they're not even taking it seriously.
Yeah. So the first COP I went to, now I've been many times, but you still felt like you were kind of on the sidelines, that young people were not in the main section of where any decisions were made. But slowly I realized that began changing. And now more and more young people are being called on decision-making tables.
Wow, that's great. That's good news.
Yes. Yeah. So, 2 examples of that is there was a treaty being proposed called the High Seas Treaty, which is about protection of areas which are beyond any national jurisdiction, like the Arctic Ice Shield, which is very important in the fight
for the
against
entire
climate
globe.
Change. Yes, and areas like this need to be protected even if they don't come under any national boundaries. Essentially, we wanted some prominent countries to ratify those treaties. And I got to meet the US State Department, their whole team, and the Secretary of the US State Department to lobby for this treaty to be passed. Wow. And I realized that there's so many scientists and experts who've been working on these things for years, but sometimes policymakers don't need somebody in a suit to tell them what needs to be done. Sometimes they need a young person who has a different voice, who has a different story, to come to them and tell them, this is important for me. Do this for our future. And when we told them that, we saw how moved they were. And the very next day, they announced that the United States was going to ratify that treaty. And that's when I realized that in the face of issues so big, our voices can also matter and can make a difference.
Right.
Then last year, ahead of the United Nations General Assembly, the UN Secretary General called upon 10 young climate innovators from different parts of the world for a special meeting where he took our recommendations on what we want him to tell the world leaders.
That's amazing.
And, actually, in the meeting, he was taking notes, and he made our recommendations a part of his report for all the world leaders.
That's amazing. So young people are getting heard out there, and actions are being taken according to them.
Absolutely.
Which is refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
Also tell me, there is a theory, right, that large industries are just being lazy. And that is why we are being guilt-tripped into recycling, reusing. While what are they doing? They are just packaging stuff in like plastics and handing it over to us.
Right.
For us to do all the hard work of recycling, right? So tell me, why can't they just like package it in a more eco-friendly manner and not use plastic in the first place? Why are we being guilt-tripped into recycling and reusing all of that?
Right. Well, that's a good and a very interesting question. And when I first launched the app, I remember a 4th grader from a small town calling me up and saying that he said, I've been taking all of these actions, but I've been recording them on the app, but I keep thinking, what difference can I alone make? What difference can one person make? We believe that when a lot of people like us come together, then our collective impact can be extraordinary.
Right.
And because of that, we launched a global meter on the homepage of the app, which will show in real time what are the collective emissions being saved by all users combined. And that's the power of people coming together.
Right.
Now, there's two scenarios that are predicted on how the world's fight against climate change might go down. So one scenario is called stated policy scenario, which is what will happen if all the countries and organizations do what they've committed to do to fight against climate change right now. In that scenario, what happens is the global emissions actually end up increasing.
Oh.
And the another scenario is what needs to happen, which is the global targets to fight against climate change is that if we want to avoid its worst effects, then we must reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So essentially what it tells us is that even if countries do what they've committed to do, it may not be enough.
Right. And they're not even doing what they've committed to do, right? A fraction of that, I think.
Right. But it's
This looks very bleak.
Right, but it's not all bleak, because if you look at the history of the biggest transformations, they don't take place when policymakers or world leaders or leading organizations decide to do something. The biggest transformations have always taken place when ordinary citizens like us come on down and say, this matters to me, I care about this, and I'm willing to take action on this. And we even experienced this, that when individuals started taking action in their own lives, when they began walking the talk, then it created a ripple effect for even the larger systemic changes that are required. So it's called demand side mitigation of climate change. Whereas when I say I need to inculcate sustainability in my life, then it creates an incentive for organizations to create sustainable products. They're not going to do it because it's the right thing to do, but they might do it because it's the lucrative thing to do. When I say I care about climate change, it creates an incentive for policymakers to say, yes, let me make laws about this because my people care about this.
I get it. I get it why mass mobility is important for any change to take place. Like the biggest example we can take is India, how we gained freedom. We didn't gain it because someone changed a policy.
Right.
We gained it because we thought we want freedom and we fought for it. And and you have beautifully applied it to climate change, saying that, okay, if every citizen decides that we need to be free of plastic or mitigate the climate crisis, we can do it. And I get what you're saying, but I don't get why industry leaders, why large industries don't stop giving us water in plastic bottles, giving my kids bottles that are made out of plastic. And imagine saying that again, Trump is banning paper straws. They're the biggest country, they're such a big economy, trendsetters in every way. And if this is what they are doing, what kind of an example are they setting for the world?
Absolutely.
And I also feel that microplastics, the 1% of the entire world, the rich, the wealthy, would just resort to buying organic and buying paper packaged things, while the common people, for the lack of affordability, will not be able to buy all of that and will end up absorbing so much microplastics, which is going to harm us, our children, our future generations. So what do you think should be done to curb that at an industry level? I get that the mass mobility you're talking about and how it can make a difference totally makes sense. But how about this?
Right.
Yeah.
I think what needs to be done and what already is happening is climate action needs to become profitable. Industries may not do it because it's the right thing to do, but they will do it because they need
profitable.
to do it, because it's profitable.
Yeah.
So I think there's two kinds of people that work on climate change. One is people who are activists and who care about the environment. There's another kind of people which are also not bad, but they're opportunists. They see that climate action is the biggest opportunity of this millennia. Because countries that take climate action today that switch to renewables faster have the potential to become green energy capital of the world. Organizations that take climate action today have the opportunity to become leaders of the new millennium. Universities that integrate climate action on their campus, like LPU,
Thank
they're
you.
a different edge. Climate action is not just a burden or a responsibility. It gives, there's a lot of people now, young people who want to look at climate change as a career. Even if they don't do it as a full-fledged career, if you're doing it even like 10% of your time, you would see that it'll help you thrive more. It'll help you grow faster. If I just done a job, if I'd sat for placements after graduation and done a job, I would not imagine being at a place that I am now. So I keep telling everybody, don't look at this as something you have to do. Look at this as something that the world is changing in the next 3 decades. The world as we know it will change. And do you want to be
a part of that change?
Part of that change.
So LPU is an eco-friendly university. We have like more than 65% green cover and everything. And we are doing our best to mitigate the climate crisis, right? And like you said, that universities and countries that take action now would be known globally for what they've done for the climate crisis. Where do you see India on that graph? Like in terms of say 1, 2, 3, numbering the countries, where do you see India in that green graph? Like where would we be in the future?
So India is doing a lot of things. One thing that I find very interesting and which really gives us an edge is that our Prime Minister launched something called Mission Life.
Right.
Lifestyle change for environment. And what we've always been saying is that sustainability is not new for us. It's been a part of our culture for generations. If you look at how our grandparents lived, they really imbibed it. And all we have to do is look 2-3 generations back and adopt to that way of living again. There's so many indigenous practices that are rooted in sustainability.
Yes.
So Mission Life is all about, our biggest strength is the large population that we have. And it's all about how this change can be led by citizens.
The masses.
By the masses. And that's what Cool the Globe does also. It's about what is it that every person can do and how they can take action and inspire a movement to be born. India, through Mission Life, is really leading that way forward.
So where would you rate it? Like on a scale of 10? India, number 3, 4, 5, when it comes to?
So if we really have to tackle climate change, India will have to be in the top, because if we are not able to solve the issue for our country, the world will not be able to solve it also. Because so if you look at global emissions, we emit about 51 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere every year. The average citizen of the world emits about 6,000 to 7,000 kilograms of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. United States citizen emits about 16,000 and Indian citizen emits about 2,500 kilograms of emissions. But because our population is so huge,
so
we are still in the top 3. So United States, China, and then India is the top emitter of greenhouse gas emissions.
Right.
So we have to solve it at our country level for the world to be able to do it. But it poses a huge opportunity for India, because we are still in that transition period to becoming a developed Vikasit Bharat by 2047. So if the road to Vikasit Bharat overlaps with our road for to becoming net zero, I think it poses a huge opportunity for India to become. We also have the sun in abundance.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So another interesting mission that India is doing is called One World, One Sun, One Grid.
Wow.
So we, along with the Prime Minister of France, our Prime Minister started International Solar Alliance, which envisions a world interconnected by one solar grid, where when other countries are sleeping and they don't have the sun, countries like India can provide.
We outsource the electricity and everything too. So
that's incredible. Like this pose a huge opportunity for our country.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Prachi. You are at LPU. What message would you like to give to the youth here?
Yes. So actually, I want to invite all the students of LPU to become a part of our movement. There's something very interesting that we're doing now. I started this app as a young student, like all of you, from my dorm room, as a young girl who wanted to make a difference, but thought only world leaders and celebrities, influencers
could do
power.
that.
But today, as I speak to you, we have citizens from 150 countries coming on the app. It's become a global app and a movement.
That's
They've
incredible.
all collectively recorded saving 7 million kilograms of carbon emissions.
Wow.
And this is just the beginning for us. So a lot of our users came to me and said, I'm doing this in my life, but now I want to bring this to my university, to my friends. I want to do this with people. And climate action doesn't have to be boring. What we're really trying to do is make it fun and engaging.
Yeah.
So now we've launched communities on the app, and we'd love to create a community for LPU, where all the students can come on the app, record the sustainable actions they're taking. Like, I know you have a climate clock.
Yeah.
Alongside that climate clock, we can have a wall of real-time actions that students are taking. We can have leaderboards where people compete with each other to
That sounds
be in the
amazing.
top 100, be in the top 10. And we can give rewards to students that are taking the most number of climate actions. So all I'd want to say to them, I think the whole purpose of this podcast is because I have one thing to share with the students and one thing to ask of them. I want to share with them a vision of the world where every single young person, every student is a change maker. And I want to ask that they believe not in somebody else, but in the power of their own actions to bring about
Right.
this change. So this is why I'm here, and I'm excited to do something exciting with the students of LPU.
Thank you so much, Prachi. This has been most enlightening and insightful, and I'm so inspired that you at such a young age are doing so much for not just the country but for the globe. So thank you so much for this
Thank you
delightful
so much.
conversation.